do you think when you hear the word hero? You typically think of someone with noble characteristics, someone who is willing to fight for what is right and do no wrong. In some films and some stories, our protagonist isn't always good. Enter the anti-hero. Some may ask, what is an anti-hero? What is the definition of an anti-hero? And if so, what important role in films and writing does these anti-heroes take place? Now, before we could start, we need to do the following. We need to ask ourselves, what is a definition of an anti-hero before we go anywhere? And according to a quick Google search, and also Merriam-Webster Dictionary, an anti-hero is defined as a central character in a story, movie, or drama who lacks a conventional heroic attributes. And that would be true. So that brings us to some of the qualities that would make a anti-hero different from a hero, right? Because they're both protagonists. It's just that one is morally better than the other in all lack of means. So for anyone who wants a typical example of it, think of someone like Luke Skywalker is a hero, right? And the reason why I bring that up is because he is a good boy. He likes to follow the rules. He also values life, so he doesn't want to needlessly kill things unless it's essentially necessary. He's also willing to fight for what is exactly right. He has a noble cause and a goal to stop the Empire. You can see his actions are all noble, right? There's a noble cause and a pursuit, which causes him to have the audience's attention. Basically, the audience says, hey, we like where you're going. Now, an anti-hero would be someone more like Han Solo. Now, before you start asking me, well, isn't Han Solo a hero too? The thing was, Han Solo started as an anti-hero. Think of it as this. Han Solo was a smuggler. Not exactly a good start for a hero, right? Because smugglers are typically people who deal drugs or, other illegal goods and services. So it doesn't really paint him as a morally green figure, more morally gray, as you could say. However, he does have some noble aspects too, I should bring up, because anti-heroes can have some noble traits, right? He's very charismatic, he's very skilled, right? Which makes him fine, right? However, he's also not afraid to just retreat and not fight for what is right. He's really kind of looking out for his own good. He's there and he wants money so he can fix his ship or, even buy a better one. Honestly, he just wants to live a good life. He could care less about the rebellion and trying to take down the Empire. As long as he's living good, everyone else doesn't exactly matter to him, which in that case doesn't make him seem as noble as someone as Luke Skywalker, or even as Leia, too. However, you could argue, over time, Han Solo did transfer into a hero. Which does bring me to the next point about anti-heroes, and what makes them actually very fun and good for story writing and films in general, is because an anti-hero can change over time, right? They can be influenced by other characters around them, like I just mentioned Han Solo. Han Solo kind of went from this smuggler who was kind of out for his own good to was fighting exactly for what was right and going against the Empire, right? Over time, he has slowly become a more noble figure, correct? If you watched episode 4 and gone to episode 6, you'd see a huge difference in character and personality, because he has grown and changed and developed as a character throughout all the battles that he's fought, and which in turn morphs him into a better character, which people kind of like that. People like that. People enjoy that type of growth, right? Because growth is what people love. And if you want to learn more about why growth is important, check out this clip up here where I talk about, Mary Sue's and compare them to heroes. But on the meanwhile topic, I also want to mention too, anti-heroes can go the other way too. They can go from being good to bad really quickly. They can pretty much just go from being gray to just straight up on the dark side. Honestly, that can also throw people for a loop too, because people can look at it and be like, wow, I did not expect that, or oh wow, okay, that's tragic, that's kind of sad. It brings another type of tone into it, because the issue with heroes is sometimes when you have a hero, it's kind of typical. You kind of know what's going to happen. The hero's going to win the end of the day, they're going to be happy, and everything's going to be okay. But with an anti-hero, there is some unpredictability, which honestly, people love unpredictability sometimes. Unpredictability leads to interest, right? That captivates your audience, hooks them in, and confirms and makes them go further. However, there is another thing I do want to talk about anti-heroes too. Since anti-heroes function on the purpose of morality, I want to talk about another big thing, the difference between an anti-hero and a villain. Now, you might ask me, what are the difference between the two? Because at some cases, it can seem like an anti-hero could be very close to a villain. The only difference between a anti-hero and a villain is that the villain is not in working with the audience's interest in mind, or at least I should say the audience doesn't agree with the final outcome of what the villain is trying to achieve usually, right? Like for example, Joker, he might be trying to kill a lot of people in the process, create chaos, watch the world burn. Not everyone wants that. People want to calm, people want a good and helpful world, so they will disagree with the Joker in that regard, right? However, an anti-hero might be someone, and I understand Batman might be controversial as an anti-hero. He does have some traits, but not correct morally. Their end goal in this case, the anti-hero's end goal is actually favorable in the audience's favor, right? Because think of it as the following. If I had a hero and a anti-hero, right? And basically, let's say both of their goals in my film were to defeat the final villain, then in that case, that would be the difference between the anti-hero and the villain, because the villain is not the one trying to achieve the final goal that the audience would agree with, right? In this case, that's why a villain is not considered a protagonist, rather they are considered an antagonist, basically the one that goes against the protagonist, and a protagonist is the one that person we follow, right? We see their story. The last thing I do have to also bring up on top of this, because I understand, I want to keep the videos short and simple, is the fact that, think of it as this, we have to talk about the subject of good. What is good? Correct? Because the idea of morality as a whole is kind of subjective. And I want to leave you off on the note of this, right? Because I believe this is the most impactful thing of an anti-hero. Some heroes can appear as anti-heroes to others. If that doesn't make sense, hear me out. Your subjective takes, right, on what is good, right? Because everyone has different sets of morals. Some people believe some other sets of traits are right, and some people might believe the said set of traits are bad. Depends on the year you were born, right? The culture you grew up with, right? Or the country you grew up in. And then on top of that, how your family raised you, right? It would make sense. Like, for example, if I were to look back on someone, right? A hero, maybe someone like the Founding Fathers, right? After they beat the British in the war, and they decided to make America free, right? And America became its own country. Someone during their time, right? Like, think of someone maybe born in, like the 1700s. They might look at it and they would be like, hey, these guys are heroes, right? They would not see too much wrong with it. However, I might see someone like me, who is noticeably in the future, right, born in the noughties, I might say, hey, they owned slaves. It doesn't exactly make them perfect, right? I would understand that they had noble causes. Hence, I would say, hey, I like the end goal that they occurred. However, they do have some flaws and imperfections to them, right? Because like owning slaves, at least nowadays, for someone like me who lives in the United States, is considered a bad thing. However, to the person who was living in the United States in the past, when it first came a country, might have not have thought so, because owning slaves back then was perfectly fine and valid. Hence, it was no eye raised when a hero owned slaves, compared to nowadays, where that would be frowned upon. So if you feel me, guys, I understand morality can be a tricky thing, and I understand this video could be very confusing. That's why, guys, if you believe that you gotten a lot of valuable information out of the video, please comment that down below. If not, please tell me what I did wrong. I would love to improve this content. And as always, guys, if you like the video, subscribe for more content like this. Comment down below what else you would want me to cover. Is there any other type of tropes you would want me to cover? Any types of shows, films you want me to cover? I will read your comments wholeheartedly down below. And as always, guys, stay awesome and be awesome.